17 years after he died, the king gave a simple order: dig up his grave and cut off his head. His name was Han Myeong-hoe. He had crowned 3 Joseon kings, married 2 of them to his own daughters, and ruled the court for 30 years. No one in 519 years of Joseon history came close. And yet in 1504, a new king ordered his coffin opened and his corpse beheaded in public. Tonight we rewind, because every drop of blood he spilled in life was waiting for him in death. Rewind. The year is 1452. The man at the center of this story is 38 years old, and his name is Han Myeong-hoe. His post is not a seat in the royal council. It is a gate. He keeps the keys to Gyeongdeokgung Palace in Songdo, the old capital at Kaesong, a minor appointment granted by family favor rather than merit, because Han Myeong-hoe had failed the civil service examination. Not once. Every single time he sat for it. This was not a man without a name. His grandfather, Han Sang-jil, had sailed to Ming China in 1393 and returned with a single word, approved by the emperor himself. That word was Joseon. The name of the kingdom Han Myeong-hoe now served was a gift his own grandfather had carried home. His own life had begun with no such glory. Born 2 months premature, a Chilsak Dungi, he was too frail to be kept. The family laid him aside to die. A maid wrapped the tiny infant in cotton, hid him in warmth, and waited. He lived. Years later, a childhood friend, a scholar named Gwon Nam, would tell him plainly, "In scholarship I cannot match you, but in the art of managing men and events, I would not fall far behind you either." The friend's name was Gwon Nam. The man he introduced? A prince with a knife in his sleeve. In 1450, King Munjong took the throne. 2 years later he was dead, and the crown passed to his son, Danjong, a boy of 12. The child wore the robes, but the real power of the kingdom sat with the chief state councillor, Kim Jong-seo, a veteran who had served 4 kings. Prince Suyang, the boy king's uncle, intended to take that power by force, and it was Han Myeong-hoe who prepared the ground. He drafted a document that named every minister at court, each one marked with his leanings, his loyalties, and his fate. Who could be turned? Who had to die? The night of October the 10th, 1453, Prince Suyang appeared at Kim Jong-seo's front gate with a letter, asking the old statesman to read it by lamplight. As Kim leaned in, a retainer named Im-un stepped from the shadows and brought down an iron hammer. The chief councillor fell at his own door. At the same hour, inside Gyeongdeokgung Palace, a forged royal summons was pulling the court from their beds. The ministers arrived to find 2 gates waiting. At the first, their servants were stripped away. At the second, each name was spoken aloud and matched against the document. If the name was on it, the man did not leave the courtyard alive. When it was over, Suyang went to the 13-year-old king and said, "I have just cut down Kim Jong-seo." The boy answered, "Uncle, please spare me." Afterward, the prince told the court, "The credit for all this belongs to Han Myeong-hoe. I did nothing." And here is what makes it extraordinary. Han Myeong-hoe never raised a weapon that night. He did not need to. His weapon was a list of names. They called it Sal Seng Bu, the killing list. By sunrise, the prince had his throne, and the gatekeeper had just begun. In 1455, Prince Suyang ascended the throne. History would remember him as King Sejong. On paper, his nephew had voluntarily abdicated. In practice, a boy of 13 had handed his crown to the uncle whose men had butchered his court. One king made. The next year, loyalists struck back. A group of scholars, later honored as the 6 martyred ministers, planned to cut Sejong down at a banquet for Ming envoys. The plan required armed royal escorts inside the hall. Han Myeong-hoe killed the plot with a single sentence. "The banquet hall is cramped and hot. Let us dismiss the armed escorts." The weapons never entered the room. The six were torn apart by oxen. In 1457, Danjong was exiled to Cheongyongpo in Yongwol. His mother's kin were eliminated. On the 24th day of the 10th month, Danjong was put to death. He was 17. Han Myeong-ho's ascent had no precedent. Right State Councillor in 1462, Left State Councillor in 1463, Chief State Councillor in 1466, Palace Gatekeeper to Prime Minister in 14 years. Sejong gave him the ultimate title, "You are my Zhang Liang." Zhang Liang was the legendary strategist behind Han Dynasty China, the highest compliment the Chinese world could offer a mind. Then Sejong died in 1468. King Yejong took the throne, married to Han Myeong-ho's third daughter. King 2, son-in-law 1. 14 months later, Yejong was dead. King Seongjong took the throne, married to Han Myeong-ho's fourth daughter. King 3, son-in-law 2. 4 times first-rank meritorious subject, Jongnan, Juaik, Iktae, Juari. And here is what defies belief. In 519 years of Joseon, this record has never been matched. So, villain or strategist? Hold that question. It will matter at the end. He was the most powerful man in Joseon. But power this absolute has a price, and his was about to be paid by the people closest to him. 2 daughters, 2 queens, both dead before 20. The third daughter was called Zhang Sun. In 1460, at the age of 15, she became crown princess. In November of 1461, she gave birth to a grandson for Han Myeong-hoe. 3 weeks later, on the 5th of December, she died of postpartum illness. She was 16. The fourth daughter was called Gong-hee. In 1467, she was married to a young prince named Jaeul-san. When that prince became King Seongjong, she was invested as queen in 1469. She died in 1474, childless. She was 19. Then came Apgujeong. On the south bank of the Han River, Han Myeong-hoe had built a pavilion. A Ming envoy named Ni Qian had given it its name, Apgujeong, to be friendly with seagulls. In the Chinese poetic tradition, it was the name a man chose when he pretended to retire. In 1481, using a Ming envoy reception as pretext, Han Myeong-hoe asked the king to lend him the royal dragon phoenix canopy. King Seongjong refused. Han Myeong-hoe used it anyway. The court moved to impeach him. His office patent was revoked. The Sarim faction was rising. Under Seongjong's personal rule, the old Kingmaker was held in check. On the 28th of November, 1487, he died. He was 73. The court gave him the posthumous name Chung Seong, loyal and accomplished. He was enshrined in the shrine hall of King Sejong, the highest honor a minister can receive. In 1488, Seo Gyeojong carved his epitaph stele. And here's the part that almost no one notices. He outlived both his queen daughters. He outlived the man who had called him Zhang Liang. He died quietly, honored, remembered. But his story did not end in 1487. It ended, or really, began its final chapter 17 years later, because a new king was coming. And the new king remembered. The year is 1504. A new king sits on the Joseon throne. His name is Yeonsang-gun, and he is the son of the deposed Queen Yun. He has spent years compiling a list of his own. Every official, living or dead, who he believes had a hand in his mother's execution. History calls what followed the Gapjar Literati Purge. 239 victims, 122 executions, and the most symbolic target of all, was a man who had already been dead for 17 years, Han Myeong-hoe. The king's command was rendered in 4 cold lines: dig up the grave, open the coffin, cut off the head, display it in public. The Korean term for this is bugwan chamsi. Open the coffin, execute the corpse. It is a punishment rare in East and West alike. The closest Western parallel came a century and a half later, in 1661, when the English exhumed Oliver Cromwell and hung his corpse in public. 17 years after he died, the king gave a simple order, and the Kingmaker's grave was broken open. In 1506, the Apgujeong restoration posthumously rehabilitated him. His honours were restored. But a severed head does not return to its body. The hand that made 3 kings could not protect its own grave. So, villain or strategist? We'll let you decide, but before you do, consider what survived him. Apgujeong Dong in Gangnam, Seoul's most expensive real estate, still carries the name of his pavilion. The Myeon-ri system he designed still shapes every Korean address. His head was severed, but what he built has lived for 500 years. Han Myeong-hoe crowned 3 kings, but the final verdict on him wasn't written by a king. It was written by time, and it's still being written every time someone types Apgujeong into a Seoul address. Villain or strategist? Tell me what you think in the comments.